Welcome to the DAV Podcast. Today we're diving deep into the groundbreaking yet increasingly challenged realm of cancer research and its vital connection to the health of our nation's veterans. DAV's Brian Buckwalter is joined by a true leader in the field, Dr. Ben Park. As the director of the prestigious Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center in Nashville, Tennessee, and a professor of medicine at the Vanderbilt University Medical Center, Dr. Park is at the forefront of the fight against cancer. He's here today to discuss his team's crucial work and the significant hurdles they're currently facing, particularly with funding this very important research.
I'm joined by Dr. Ben Park. He's the director of the Vanderbilt Ingram Cancer Center in Nashville, Tennessee. He's also a professor of medicine in the Division of Hematology and Oncology at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. Dr. Park, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about your work in cancer research and the recent challenges you've faced with that work, especially as it relates to military veterans. I'd like to begin more generally. Can you just share a little bit more about the clinical research your team is doing, both around cancer and your partnership with the VA?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Brian, for having me. This is an absolute honor and privilege to be talking with you, especially on behalf of our constituents, which are patients, including and especially vets who have served so admirably for our country. Our research is really focused on earlier diagnosis, prevention, and treatment of all cancers. And so that includes our relationship with the Veterans Hospital here in Nashville. And a lot of what we do is both clinical research, but also laboratory research. And in fact, many of our faculty within the Cancer Center have secondary appointments at the VA Hospital here in Nashville. And that's a model that exists across the country. We provide not only clinical services for our patients at the VA, but we also provide research that is literally life-saving, both in the lab and in the clinic. And even though that research takes years sometimes to translate into immediate benefit, without it, we wouldn't be where we are today, where we can cure so many more cancers that we could not 30 years ago, 20 years ago, et cetera. That's really what makes the relationship so special between VA hospitals that are affiliated with academic medical centers.
But this research has been put in jeopardy, hasn't it?
It has. One of the things that we're all fearful of is that this is going to actually result in a huge kind of bottleneck that is going to take years, if not decades, to recover from. And so I think the real hard part about all of this going on right now in terms of funding being held back or being cut is that we're at such a great point in cancer research in the history of humankind. I mean, we have done things that were science fiction when I was first training in the 1990s, and that also included the Philadelphia VA when I was at Penn. There are things that are unimaginable, and I think that's kind of the bad part about not having people who understand that all the dollars that have been spent into cancer research have not been just wasted money. It's actually led to tangible results that have cured more patients, something that even I was skeptical of in the 1990s when I was training. And I got to tell you, it has been so amazing and rewarding to see the types of new therapies that have come out of research, which again included VA hospitals.
Yeah. And when you talk about that research and science fiction, it's still science fiction to me, but to see what's happening is absolutely incredible. What's at stake, though, when you lose funding from the VA or from any grant for that matter? What's at stake?
To put it in the simplest, most direct terms, patients' lives. I mean, one of the things that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of is that there are only a few specialty centers among VA hospitals, and Nashville VA Hospital is one of them, where we are one of two hospitals that do bone marrow transplants for cancer therapy. And we're the only one in the country that does something new called cellular therapies, or relatively new. This is the science fiction part. We can take out people's immune cells, we call them T cells. We can insert foreign genes to redirect them to a patient's cancer and give them back to the patient. And this type of therapy has cured incurable lymphomas, of which, again, we here at Vanderbilt and the Nashville VA Hospital have been a part of. This is the only VA that now offers this as an approved therapy. And so patients have to come here and we have to be there for them to cure their cancers. And that's where, the halting on research and the cuts on research are really going to affect patient lives.
And then you also, imagine it would go a little bit beyond that too. Training, right, for doctors and even just that research hour.
Yeah, the VA, and many people may not be aware of this, the VA hospital system has been instrumental for training the next generation of researchers. And that includes maybe especially cancer research in our case. So we have a number of young faculty who have garnered meritorious scores on VA awards. These are grants that the VA peer reviews, just like NIH grants, and actually funds. And many of those have been delayed indefinitely. And that's really hurting, as you pointed out, the trainees, the junior faculty, our ability to get their careers off the ground, really. I mean, one of the awards is called the Career Development Award, and our faculty really depend on those awards to launch their careers. And this is also something that many people may not realize, but has really made the VA hospital's system and research instrumental for faculty career development.
And then beyond the development with the VA, with their faculty, why is VA funding so important specifically?
I think because it serves a very specific mission of always pointing research that's going to somehow affect veterans in this country. I've said this many times before, but I really feel like the veterans of this country have really served in such an admirable fashion. They've sacrificed and put their lives on the line for this country. And it's my belief that they all deserve the very best care. And again, in my case, especially cancer care. We need to be here for our patients. And that includes, again, especially and specifically for this conversation, the vets that, again, we owe this to them because they have really selflessly given so much for this country.
The National Association of Veterans Research and Education Foundations, commonly known as NAVREF, called the pause in funding unprecedented threat to the cornerstone of veterans healthcare. Have you seen anything like this in your experience before?
We've always had some cuts from the government for funding here and there, and it kind of ebbs and flows, as you can imagine, with various administrations and economies. But this degree of cuts, no, I've not witnessed this. And, I've been a trainee or a student of oncology since the mid-1990s. So I think that speaks volumes for how this particular set of cuts is really going to undermine a lot of the progress that we have made.
Is the funding replaceable? Is there anything that people should know? Is there anything that we can do?
The funding really isn't replaceable. In fact, even with the funding prior to the cuts, it still wasn't enough. Most institutions really relied upon additional sources of funding wherever they could find it. Usually that's philanthropic sources. Sometimes it's from industry-sponsored trials, so pharmaceutical companies, et cetera. But this takes a big chunk of the pie out. And so that's something that I think is really not replaceable. And I think what the public, and I hope to raise awareness, is that this is really not about politics or demographics. It's really about the care of our veterans and the future of cancer treatments through research. And I hope what people get out of this is that, they can contact their representatives, their congresspersons, and really try to advocate for our vets. Because I do think everyone's lives, no matter who you are, where you're from, what your beliefs are, everyone's lives are affected by cancer. Everyone seems to at least know someone who has cancer by the time they reach their 30s and 40s. And that number just continues to increase. We got to stop that, and we got to do it through research, which has been proven time and time again to lead to tangible results.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I really thank you for your time. My overall arching message is really we need the public's help to raise awareness and try to get funding back to where we were.
Agree. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dr. Park, and sharing what is happening as it pertains to cancer research, what is happening, and the potential impacts from removing that funding. Really do appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Brian.
The advancements Dr. Park and his colleagues are making offer real hope, and it's clear that the current funding challenges pose significant threat to the progress and ultimately to the lives of those who have served our nation. We encourage you to heed Dr. Park's call to action. Reach out to your representatives and make your voice heard in support of continued and robust funding for VA cancer research. The health and well-being of our veterans depend on it. Thank you for joining us on the DAV Podcast. To learn more about DAV's advocacy for veterans and how you can get involved, please visit DAV.org. That's it for now. We'll see you on the next podcast.